Welcome to the Laughter Clinic podcast with comedian and suicidologist Mark McConville, bringing you practical, evidence-based self-care strategies, the latest research in mental health, along with conversations that inspire, educate, and entertain. This is the Laughter Clinic podcast with your host, Mark McConville.
Hey folks, Mark McConville here. How you going? And welcome to this, the first of the TLC Pulse episodes. So the Pulse episodes are where I will share with you 5 carefully curated insights from around the world in the field of mental health, suicide prevention, and the research into the health benefits of humour and laughter. So in doing this, it enables me to keep up to date with what's going on in the world in these 3 very interesting fields. And as I do that, I'll find 5 interesting items that I feel are worthy of sharing with you. So for the first one, to kick us off, I've got 5 crackers to have a chat about. So firstly, item number 1 on the list we're going to talk about is a study out of Japan, which looks at the effects of the effects of laughter on focus and stress in middle-aged adults. So that's an interesting one. Then we're going to dive into a research in Australia looking at stress levels and depression levels in teachers. Big one, that. Thirdly, we're going to have a chat about World Suicide Prevention Day, which is coming up on the 10th of September, a couple of weeks away. And then social media age limit coming into Australia. So that's a really prickly one to get our head around. And then finally, we're going to wind it up with a fantastic initiative coming out of the UK that looks at how comedy shows could be prescribed for people on antidepressants to curb the rates of to curb the NHS costs. So, yeah, some fantastic things to get into there. So first things first, I just want to say thank you very much for joining me on this, the first TLC Pulse. And all of the articles that I'm referring today, I will put links to in the show notes so you can have a flick through them yourselves if you like. So let's dive into it. Number 1 on the list. I actually saw this article on one of my Google alerts, came out of the Jerusalem Post, would you believe? And it's in relation to a study that happened in Japan. The headline reads, "Only 4 minutes, the fun activity that can reduce stress and improve focus." In case you needed more proof, a new study found that even a short burst of laughter can significantly benefits the brain and mental health. So how short? How short are we talking? This is what's really cool about this study. Is there a way, so it goes on to say, is there a way to improve your concentration and lower your stress levels in just 4 minutes? 4 minutes, my friends. That's what's really cool about this. Without medication, physical exercise, or even going outside. A study recently published in BMC Complementary Medicines, this is the beginning of this year, published in BMC Complementary Medicines and Therapies suggested that a short dose of laughter may be all it takes to reduce stress and enhance focus. What a very, very cool thing to look at. So the study, conducted by a group of researchers in Japan, examined how watching a short, funny video clip affects mental performance and stress levels in healthy individuals aged 40 to 65. The results are surprising. Well, I don't know why they're surprising. We know this stuff works. Even short laughter has a significantly positive effect on the brain and the mind. So there is no doubt that we live in a complex, challenging reality, and many of us experience reduced focus, chronic stress, and mental fatigue. Many people don't seek treatment or don't have time to access advanced tools. Therefore, there's growing interest in simple, accessible, non-invasive approach to improving mental health. And the fact that they have done this study and had the study participants do 4-minute bursts of laughter is really fantastic, and it's something that I'm personally so stoked about, because in my laughter clinic presentations that I do in my human laughter education program, I talk to people about building a laughter library. You know, finding what is it that's What is it that makes you laugh? Getting on YouTube, building a laughter library. You create a playlist. You don't know how to create a playlist on YouTube, ask a 10-year-old. They'll do it. And then you just chuck a whole heap of stuff in your laughter library that makes you laugh, what you find funny. And then you can give yourself laughter therapy sessions throughout the day, or, save it up and do 20 to 30 minutes at night. But the fact that, and I actually say to people when you're doing these laughter therapy sessions, it might only be 3 or 4 minutes in between meetings or whatever it is that you've got going on. And the fact that these guys have done a research study and they've looked at a 4-minute video is very cool, because it really relates strongly to what I've been advocating in doing your self-administered laughter therapy. So, laughter has long been considered a natural tool for reducing stress, the article goes on to say. Previous studies have shown that it lowers blood pressure, enhances immune function, and reduces cortisol levels. However, until now, it hadn't been thoroughly examined how short laughter affects the brain functions such as concentration, memory, especially in middle-aged individuals. So I'm just saying a lot of the research done up until now has been long form. The study involved 25 healthy Japanese adults aged 40 to 65. Each participant watched 2 videos, one particularly funny clip featuring a famous comedian, and the other clip was considered less funny, and it was used as a control video. Each of the videos lasted about 4 minutes. So there you go. They chose the time. Very interesting. After each viewing, participants completed a series of computer-based tests assessing concentration, memory, and attention. Simultaneously, psychological parameters were measured: blood flow in the brain, heart rate, mood, biological stress markers in saliva, and the results: better focus and improved mood. Well, giddy up to that, I say. The difference between the comedy video and the control video was clear and measurable. So this is very cool. This is a great study, really highlights the fact that, it's what we're talking about, giving yourself self-administered laughter therapy sessions throughout the day, very important. So even just 4 minutes has been shown to have a positive effect. So fantastic article to kick us off, that one there. So once again, link to it will be in the show notes. Second item on our list that I would like to have a chat to you about is something that has come out of the newsroom from the University of New South Wales here in Australia. And pretty stark headline this, it's only released in the last few days. Teachers' depression, anxiety and stress at 3 times the national norm. How's that for a headline? As I said, this has come out of the University of New South Wales. 9 out of 10 Australian teachers are experiencing severe stress. 9 out of 10. And nearly 70% say their workload is unmanageable. I was going to say unimaginable. And nearly 70% say their workload is unmanageable, says the University of New South Wales research study. So the article goes on to say a new study from researchers at New South Wales Sydney, the first to examine rates of depression, anxiety and stress in Australian teachers, has found they experience these mental health issues at 3 times the national norm. The study, which is entitled Teachers' Workload, Turnover, Intentions and Mental Health, is once again, link will be in the show notes, published in Social Psychology of Education, surveyed nearly 5,000 primary and secondary school teachers across Australia. Now, here's some interesting stats for you. Researchers found that 90% of teachers reported moderate to extremely severe levels of stress, while more than 2/3 experienced moderate to extremely severe symptoms of depression and anxiety. These figures for depression and anxiety alone are more than double the national average and point to a profession under immense pressure. And it's not just a wellbeing issue. This is a workplace issue, make no mistake. So the study used validated psychological measures using the DASS, which is, for those of you that don't know, it's what's called the Depression, Anxiety and Stress Scale. I've used this before myself. It's a good, easy to use, robust test. And the study revealed that teachers' average scores for depression, anxiety and stress were in the extremely severe range compared to national norms. Teachers scored 3 times higher for depression and nearly 4 times higher for stress. It's incredible, isn't it? And it basically, there's another big headline here that says this is one of the largest and most comprehensive studies of teachers' mental health in Australia. It provides a clear and urgent message. Our teachers are struggling and they need support, and they do. And, from personal experience, I've got a few teachers that I know. I've got a couple of teachers in the family, and it is without a doubt a noble profession. I really believe that. Being a teacher, I put in there with, first responders and nurses, and there's certain professions that you go, that is a noble profession, to go out and do these things for the betterment of our community and our country. And, so a big shout out to any teachers that might be out there listening, and just I want to really acknowledge the job that you do and the importance of what you do. And I really hope that you're finding a way to look after yourself and taking some time to administer a little bit of self-care. So what needs to change? The article goes on to talk about some recommendations in response to these findings. The research team is calling for a multi-pronged approach to support teacher wellbeing. Policy reforms to reduce non-essential workload and streamline administrative tasks. Well, yeah, that's a big one right there. School-level monitoring of teacher wellbeing and workload. That sounds like that could be one that would be top of the list to implement. The next one, invest in digital mental health programs tailored for educators, allowing flexible self-paced support. Yeah, I kind of get that one. I would like to see more of, kind of what I do and what other people do, and go out and do live, training and mental health activities for teachers on training days and that sort of stuff. Because any time that I've gone and done a laughter clinic for a group of teachers at a school, the feedback has been outstanding as to what they've got out of it and how much they enjoyed a laugh, and they really got a lot of, personal mental health stuff out of it. So, yeah, on digital mental health programs, yeah, I get it because it's easily accessible. But, don't lose the fact that we need live stuff, because you're never going to beat being in a room with 20 or 30 teachers, making them laugh. It's the best. So, this study took place between October 2022 and May 2024 with recruitment via the Black Dog Institute website and social media channels using targeted social media outreach and teacher-specific platforms. So there's a lot in this report. Like I said, the link's in the show notes if you want to check it out. But basically what we need to do is we need to make sure that we're looking after our teachers, because I'm sure this isn't a problem that is unique to Australia. I'm sure that there would be teachers around the world that would probably experience these types of stress and these levels of stress, anxiety and depression. So if you're a teacher out there, kudos to you. Acknowledge the incredibly important work that you do, and please find a way of looking after yourself. So number 3 on our items of interest for the first Pulse episode. On the 10th of September, coming up, it is World Suicide Prevention Day. This is a day that is recognised every year. Communities, organisations and governments across Australia and around the world come together to mark World Suicide Prevention Day. And it is a time to reflect, connect and recommit to a shared goal of preventing suicide and spreading hope. Every year they have a theme for World Suicide Prevention Day, and this year's theme is changing the narrative on suicide. It challenges us to transform how we think and talk about suicide in communities. It's a call for a shift from silence and stigma to openness, empathy and action, to ensure those who are struggling feel heard, supported and connected. together we can help create a future where more lives are saved and more stories are shared. So from a personal point of view, I've worked in the field of suicide prevention now since I started studying back in 2015 at Griffith University, and it is an incredibly complex field of study. It's great that we hear from the voice of lived experience now and how important that is in all suicide prevention programs, because the voice of lived experience can help provide hope to people that might not be but that might be struggling to find hope in their life. So in Australia, the 10th of September, it actually coincides. We have an initiative here called Are You OK Day, which is, I think it's the second Thursday of every September. So this year it actually falls on the 11th of September, the day after World Suicide Prevention Day. And Are You OK Day is a fantastic initiative. It really is. It encourages people to have conversations, checking in on your friends, reaching out to people who you think may be struggling. And it's one of those things that you mention it, and then people that are in the mental health sector or suicide prevention sector say every day should be Are You OK Day, which is their right. Every day should be. Because, suicide prevention happens at a community level. It is the day-to-day interactions that we have in relation to looking after ourselves and looking after those around us that can really help to prevent suicide. So Are You OK Day, once again, fantastic initiative. There will be some stuff in the show notes in relation to resources online, because if you do find, if you do think to yourself that there's someone that you wouldn't mind asking, how they're going and having a conversation with them if you're worried, do yourself a favour and get a little bit educated prior to going into that conversation, because it's very important. There's right things to say and wrong things to say. So I'll put some stuff in the show notes for some references for you to go and have a look at. So World Suicide Prevention Day, 10th of September, changing the narrative on suicide. Very important. Right. Now let's look at number 4 on the list for today. This one is a prickly one. The social media age restrictions that are coming into Australia. Well, this is really something that is creating a lot of buzz in the mental health and suicide prevention community. So this article that I'm referring to is from the E-Safety Commissioner on the Australian Government website. The headline reads, "The Australian Government is protecting young Australians at a critical stage of their development through world-first social media age restrictions." Now, before we get into this, I just would like to say that recently I read a book called The Anxious Generation, written by a guy called Jonathan Haidt, and that is spelt Haidt. I came away from that book thinking to myself, now I don't have any kids myself, right? I'm a grandfather having never been a father. That's a whole other story. But, so I don't have any kids myself. But I came away from reading that book thinking to myself, this is something that I think every parent should read, especially in this day and age, because Jonathan he's a very clever guy, and he draws a very distinct parallel between the advent of smartphones and social media with the decline in global mental health, and especially around adolescence. And he talks about how social media affects young boys differently to young girls and the implications for all of that. And so, if you are a little bit, on the fence, or you're very divided, you've got very strong beliefs about this initiative that the Australian government is looking like putting in, I suggest, if you're so inclined and you're interested enough, it's a really good book to read. It's called The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's So anyway, let's get into this. Let's get into this article on the E-Safety Commissioner's website for Australia. So they go on to say from the 10th of September, got it in my brain, from the 10th of December 2025, age-restricted social media platforms will have to take reasonable steps to prevent Australians under the age of 16 from creating or keeping an account. So these restrictions aim to protect young Australians from pressures and risks that users can be exposed to while logged into social media accounts. These come from design features that encourage them to spend more time on screens while also serving up content that can be harmful to their health and well-being. Now, we all know that social media has its place, and it can be a tool for good, and it also can be a tool for bad and evil and, online bullying and all that sort of stuff. And I really, I just want to acknowledge anybody that's out there that has had to deal with this in their life, because this is an incredibly complicated situation that we find ourselves in at the moment. The article goes on to say, while no formal assessments have been made, the age restrictions are likely to apply to Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, X, which is formerly Twitter, and YouTube. It says among other platforms. Now, what those other platforms would be, who knows? More generally, age restrictions will apply to social media platforms that meet 3 specific conditions, right? And so basically, the conditions are like the sole purpose or the significant purpose of the service is to be enabled to online social interaction between 2 or more end users, allows end users to link to or interact with some or all of the other end users, and the service also allows end users to post material on the service. So I got to tell you, the legislation and everything behind this is going to be so complicated. I mean, it's just, it's just a lot. It really is. But this is the interesting thing that when I was reading this article that I didn't realise. And so this goes on to say that it's not a ban. It's a delay in having accounts, right? So, for a long, they've been saying, it's a ban on social media. They're saying it's not a ban, it's a delay. So this means there will be no penalties for under 16s who access an age-restricted social media platform or for their parents or carers. Let me repeat that. This means there will be no penalties for under 16s who access an age-restricted social media platform, their parents or carers. However, age-restricted social media platforms may face penalties if they don't take reasonable steps to prevent under 16s from having accounts. Reasonable measures. How do you even measure that? So what would the penalties be if they don't do what they're told? These media platforms, a court can order civil penalties for platforms that don't take reasonable steps to prevent underage users from having accounts on their platforms. This includes court-imposed fines up to 150,000 penalty units for corporations. So how that works, I don't know, but it's saying here that that is currently equivalent to a total of 49.5 million Australian dollars. So they're planning on hitting them in the hip pocket, but really, when we look at the size of these corporations, is 49.5 million, like it's a lot to you and me, and it seems inconceivable, but I'm sure that for these big multinational corporations, and it's probably a drop in the ocean. So it's a really interesting thing, this, and like I said, it's very complicated. It's coming into effect at the end of this year. And so, there's a lot of articles and research around this when it comes to the effects of social media on youth. And like I said, I'll put a couple of things in the show notes there, but myself personally, I go on, the stuff that I read in Jonathan Haidt's book, because his is all research backed, and there's a lot of evidence to support what he's saying in his book. He is a supporter of, he is a supporter of the age restriction. And in actual fact, it's the weirdest thing. The day that I actually finished reading his book, the actual day was the day that Anthony Albanese came out and said that he wanted to try and impose this age restriction for under 16-year-olds. And And in actual fact, Jonathan that's the age that he talks about in his book is 16. So it's an interesting read. He outlines all the research and data to show the harmful effects of social media on our youth. I tell you, it's a complicated one. You've got the harmful effects of online bullying that kids can't get away from, and then you've got the importance of social connectedness. We live in a big country, Australia. We are all over the shop, and sometimes the social media might be the only way that these kids can stay connected to each other. So it's a complicated setup. So if you're a parent, just I wish you luck. I really do, because it's a complicated setup, and try and keep abreast of what's going on. But if you get a chance, read Jonathan's book, The Anxious Generation. Really worth a read. Right, so let's get a little bit lighter now, shall we? And wind it up with our last item on the list, which is a cracking story out of the UK. This one, this was on the Daily Mail website. This was published the 20th of February this year, and the headline reads, "Is laughter the best medicine? Comedy shows could be prescribed for people on antidepressants to curb NHS costs." Well, giddy up to that. How's this? This is a cracking story. It is an old adage that laughter is the best medicine, but now trials are taking place to provide comedy on prescription in a bid to improve people's mental health, reduce the NHS costs, and offer alternatives to antidepressants. Well, what a feel-good bloody story this is, I tell you. And there's so much I like about this story. So technology firm Crack Health, right, which is spelled C-R-A-I-C, Crack Health, which is, that's a cracking name, right, has secured grant funding for its social media prescribing scheme, which uses comedy-based interventions such as stand-up comedy shows, workshops to help people who are lonely, isolated, and vulnerable to get involved in community events. Well, there is so much about this that I love, because, community engagement is everything when it comes to mental health. And, as I travel around Australia, we go to a lot of different outback communities and all that sort of stuff. And, in Australia, we have a mental health system that is really struggling. We've got people that are in need of mental health treatment or access to mental health services, and they've got reduced access because of where they are, wait times and all this sort of stuff. And so when I travel around to these little communities, I say community engagement is everything. You're your support for each other. You really are. So getting out and not being isolated and engaging in your community is fantastic. In actual fact, I've got 2 episodes on the solo series, which you can look at there. One is on social health, why it's important, and community engagement, how to foster a sense of belongingness. So check them out. But let's get back to this story. So Crack Health, back to Crack Health. The company said it is looking at whether its comedy on prescription approach can help reduce England's mental ill health costs in line with other social prescribing schemes. This is a beauty, isn't it? Crack added, right? I've got to tell you, just reading this off this article. Crack added, its project is aimed at helping the comedy industry, community organisations and governments to work together on comedy-based social prescriptions in a bid for it to be used more widely in the health service. What an apps. This, I tell you, when I read this, I was like, I'm loving so much of this, because when I started working in the field of suicide prevention and mental health, I had this dream of creating a formal link between the comedy industry and the mental and that of mental health. Because me personally, I believe that, in Australia we have the Medicare system, right? We have a fantastic health system in Australia where a lot of your free healthcare, we pay for it in our taxes, obviously, but Medicare. And so, I have this dream of, one day people being able to, go to a comedy club on a Friday night, pay $30 for their ticket or whatever, and then on Monday morning they go to Medicare and get a full refund from the government because, we've shown that mental health, humour and laughter is It's bloody good for your mental health. And so, yeah, that's a dream. But anyway, so let's move on to this article. So the work is supported by an MP in government. He's got on board. This guy's a doctor. Labor MP Simon Offer. Now, I hope I pronounced his name right. It's spelled Opher. Now, Simon has warned in Parliament about the pandemic of overprescription and outlined how making people laugh can avoid the need for medication. Don't you just love this guy? The Stroud MP helped pioneer social prescriptions, including using the arts, and believes that there is an opportunity to further explore the benefits of comedy events. Well, giddy up, Simon. Go, son, I say. Simon is linked up with Crack founder Lou Jackson, and the pair will host, Simon and Lou will host an event in Parliament on the 13th of March, right? So remember, this article was published on the 20th of Feb, right? So now this says here that the pair will host an event in Parliament on the 13th of March to discuss the impact of the trials which are taking place in the Westminster area of London. Right. So how did they go? We'll get to that in a minute. The NHS figures show that 8.7 million people in England took antidepressants in 23-24, increased by 2.1%. So Dr. Simon Offer says that 1 in 5 adults are on antidepressants. That's partly because there are no other treatments readily often available. So if you go to see a GP with mild to moderate depression, you get referred for psychology. That's often a 4 to 6 month wait. So we're talking about the UK here. It's probably not that different here in Australia, to be honest. And so you're not going to do that as a GP. That's not very supportive treatment. You want something else. So what else do? You reach for your prescription pad, and so that's where people like Lou come in. From Crack Health. This is the first time we've tried comedy, and that's what's exciting about this. Miss Jackson said from Crack Comedy, said comedy on prescription could help reduce the costs linked to mental health issues in the country, noting there can be immediate and longer-lasting health benefits connected to comedy. And I've got to tell you, so it just says here, she added, it's a cortisol decreaser, dopamine producer, potent releaser of serotonin, endorphins, and good neuropeptides. So if you want to know more about this, right, and the real-world applications of this, check out my episode where I have a chat to a gentleman by the name of Craig Coombs. I've got to tell you, that's an inspiring chat right there. Craig, in 2012, was given 18 months to live, and we chatted in the beginning of August this year, and he's a huge advocate for the health benefits of humour and laughter and actually doing stand-up. So anyway, check that out. I digress. Back to Miss Jackson from Crack. Going to one comedy workshop or going to one stand-up comedy event or having a comedian come in and teach kids how to improvise and laugh at themselves, it's got an effect for 24 hours, and surely that's better than prescribing antidepressants. And Craig actually talks about that in his chat with me. He talks about the ongoing benefits the next day from going to a comedy show or doing one. So, yeah, awesome. Let's find out what the results were, shall we? So, on the 14th of March, the day after they handed down their findings to the Parliament, the headliner reads, "No-brainer to fund comedy on prescription to aid in mental health, MPs here. Funding comedy on prescription is a no-brainer. MPs have heard as initial feedback suggests trials of the scheme had a positive impact on people's mental health. Crack Health, back to Crack, secured funding for its social prescribing scheme, which uses comedy-based interventions such as stand-up shows and workshops to help people who are lonely, isolated and vulnerable to get involved in community events." Brilliant. Like I said, community engagement, love it. Labor MP Simon Offer, who helped pioneer the social prescriptions, has championed the scheme and hopes to ensure comedy can become more mainstream in terms of NHS treatment as an alternative to antidepressants in cases of mild symptoms. So he's referring to mild symptoms of depression and anxiety here. So Lou Jackson, who is the founder of CRAC, said responses from surveys completed by those involved in the first 5 events held between December and March in London had been positive, with nearly all wanting to attend more. Of course, they want more crack, which I've just realised how bad that sounds, but they want more comedy, right? Okay, it's produced by CRAC, they want more comedy. The tech company is looking at whether its comedy on prescription approach can help reduce England's mental ill health cost in line with other social prescribing schemes. The NHS figures, okay, we mentioned that before, 8.7 million people in England took antidepressants in 23-24. Wow, that's a lot, isn't it? National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, they love their acronyms, right? National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, which they've said is nice. They missed out the H, right? Guideline says antidepressants should not be routinely offered as the first treatment for less severe depression unless it's the person's preference. Well, that's fair, you know. One Westminster's acting chief executive, Shelley Reynolds, speaking in an event in Parliament to discuss the trials of the comedy industry, said, and I quote, "It was something that was different. We knew that it would work. We didn't need to see evaluations and outcomes, reports and numbers and things on a charts to say that it works. Why? Because we all know this works. When we know that if you laugh, you feel better. So it was a bit of a no-brainer to fund crack. It gets me every time, I'm sorry. With our little pot of money from the Westminster community grants. And this is great. You know, I love this. This is the sort of thing that, you know, Australian governments need to get involved with, and you know, local councils around the country. You know, if you've got some money for funding for mental health, you know, get comedians out there, you know, get, you know, not only myself doing laughter clinics, but comedy shows, get people out engaged in the community, putting on comedy shows. You know, it's so important. It really is. And there's so much research to support it, you know. And I love this. This is really cool. This is a really cool thing. So he said here, it was thought the most amazing idea and something that we could really do, quite groundbreaking. And this report, or these, you know, the statements that they were given to Parliament, they said in relation to the interest for future events, 98% of people are interested, and the likelihood of coming to more events was 92%. Very, very cool. So a total of 56 participants completed forms in relation to these surveys. Simon Offer from Stroud, the Stroud MP, said, antidepressants are fantastic medicines and I've seen really great results, and some people really, really do well on them. But 1 in 5 of the adult population are on these tablets, once again from the UK. We need to offer something different to people with mild symptoms. The trouble is you go to the doctor has 10 minutes with you, you're referred to a psychologist, you have a 6-month wait, and there's nothing that we can really do but prescribe antidepressants for a lack of other alternatives. Dr. Offer goes on to say, very importantly, I'm not saying comedy is going to solve all of our emotional problems in this country, and that is certainly far too trite, and I really acknowledge that some people really require antidepressants. However, my feeling is that we need to try different things first. Dr. Offer went on, what I'd really like to do is start getting comedy a bit more sort of mainstream in the NHS. Don't you love this guy? Wonderful. Beautiful. I absolutely love it. What a fantastic initiative this is. And my friends, it is the last on my 5 items worth noting in the first TLC Pulse episode. So I really hope you've enjoyed it. I am grateful for your time. I hope that you've got something out of it. I hope you've found, little bits and pieces of useful information in there, tools and strategies that you might be able to use in your day-to-day life, whether it be the 4-minute, the 4-minute prescribing of little comedy clips in between, stressful day, or teachers looking after yourselves, making sure that we've got an awareness around World Suicide Prevention Day coming up, being mindful of the stuff that is going on in relation to the upcoming social media legislation coming into effect in Australia. And, comedy on prescription out of the UK. Go out, community, get connected, have a laugh. Love it. Love it so much. I love so much about that last story. Anyway, my friends, once again, thank you very much for your time. I really hope you got something out of this. If you liked it, share and subscribe, all of that jazz. My name's Mark McConville. You've been listening to the Laughter Clinic Pulse episode. And please look after yourself. Be kind to yourself and be kind to those around you. Talk to you next time. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. The information contained in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended, nor should it ever replace advice received from a physician or mental health professional. Want more info? Visit thelaughterclinic.com.au. If you enjoyed the episode, please share and subscribe. Thanks again for listening to the Laughter Clinic podcast with your host, Mark McConville.